Hey guys, remember to like the video and hit subscribe.
This is how the liberal media class will operate in the coming decades when it's time to answer for their crimes of manufacturing consent for a. They will simply say,
Can I just say, I just want to reiterate one more time that I had this horrendous, this disgusting fantasy so long ago that the internet would just be, in the streamer space, a whole bunch of people autistically arguing over whatever factual disagreements they had and citing papers and videos and reports, whatever, back and forth. And it wasn't just going to be people screaming, basically like, oh, you support John. Oh, well, you support John. Oh, you support. Like, it's just like the most annoying, like, it's just so annoying. There's just never any real discussion, which is disappointing, especially because Israel-Palestine is like a very rich area for a whole multitude of discussion. And a lot of like really interesting stuff is present there as well, like interesting concepts related to international law, a lot of interesting stuff related to history and historical justifications for violence, interesting stuff related to like what makes a nation, what makes a people. There's just like a rich tapestry of arguments that could be woven or given in relation to this, but instead it's just all like screaming back and forth, which is an intentional strategy, at least by the Palestinians, I guess. But I don't know, it's a little disappointing to see people play into that so much, but whatever.
Say, no, I didn't. If they say anything at all, most of them won't. It's happened throughout history. It happened with the Vietnam War. It happened with the invasion of Iraq, and it'll happen.
Wait,
it's
what?
outside. They will simply say, when it's time to answer for their crimes of manufacturing consent for a. They will simply say, no, I didn't. If they say anything at all, most of them won't. It's happened throughout history. It happened with the Vietnam War. It happened with the invasion of Iraq, and it'll happen again with Gaza. What makes Gaza?
Well, I think Vietnam is seen universally as a bad thing the U.S. did, no? Are there people right now, even in media, that defend the Vietnam War? Is it? Okay.
Gaza, a bit different, though, is that unlike prior U.S.-backed atrocities abroad, we all know what's been happening there the entire time. Israel's genocide of Palestinians in Gaza has been called the first ever live-streamed genocide because we've seen the entire thing as it's happened with high-definition cell phone video. The mass destruction, the ruthless attacks on the healthcare system, the deliberate targeting of men, women, children.
He's saying the media warmongers didn't admit to their part of Vietnam or Iraq. I mean, maybe at the time, but maybe at the time they agreed with it, right? I mean, like, history also views situations differently. Like, people's perspectives on things can change over time as well, right? Like, keep in mind, we are completely divorced from the context of living in like a Cold War era. Like, we don't even know what that means or what that feels like. Not to say that Vietnam was right or whatever, but I mean, I guess if that's your criticism, then okay.
Medics, aid workers, the intentional starvation used by Israel as a weapon of war, and then the massacres that followed that starvation when Palestinians crowded around aid trucks trying to get what little food Israel was allowing.
And like, it sucks on this Palestinian thing because it's always like these little tidbits, like all of these things, like the Flower Massacre was a nickname that was given to this event. And it was like, there's no proof whatsoever of the characterization that he's given here, that basically they threw flour out in order to lure Palestinians here so that they could like mass kill them. Like, there's no evidence that this happened like this, but of course it's just the story they all run with. And it's like, okay, well.
Starvation when Palestinians crowded around aid trucks trying to get what little food Israel was allowing into the Strip. The 20,000 slain children, many of them slaughtered with their entire families. The IDF terrorists recording and posting their war crimes, acts of humiliation, degradation, their torture.
Why do we care about this guy's opinion to watch this? One, because his views have been getting quite a bit of coverage on it. Two, is because it allows me to speak about my perspective and knowledge of these events. And three, because he's calling a lot of other content creators out, not just me, but also like Mudahar and Ethan, who have also responded to it, so it's topical, it's relevant. And at least he somewhat brings up points more than Hassan does, because Hassan will just call people names. At least this guy, even if it's all stupid propaganda, at least knows bringing up something. But
sure. And of Palestinians, the full support of Israel throughout all of these atrocities, the vile, dehumanizing racism that is required to uphold a project like this.
I just think we need to kill them, every one of them, and that's it. And if not that, because...
Also, I don't know if I would go this far to say it, but they would say it on the other side. I think that there are strong arguments that if you think that no reasonable mind can disagree that what's happening in Gaza right now is a... I think there are strong arguments to say that that's anti-Semitism. The reason why is because you're essentially saying that there is a country full of people, and he's citing these conversations with ordinary Israeli civilians, not with IDF soldiers, just ordinary Israeli civilians, saying somehow Every single Jewish person living in Israel can't see the very obvious truth that this is a horrific. None of them are able to see it. I think there are strong arguments that that's, if you were to make any sort of similar claim about the peoples of an Arab state, or even about the Palestinians, like, oh, they use human shields. Why? Because Arabs hate their children. Like, they would call you Islamophobic even, or anti-Arab or whatever. But I don't know. But I don't even go there, I guess. But you could make strong. If I was having like an intellectual debate and we were all being honest, I would make that argument. That I would say that this rises to the level of essentially anti-Semitism. That you're saying there's a whole society full of people whose nation is built on the idea of, and they're either all collectively too stupid to realize it, or they all just support it because they're just genocidal in ethnic makeup, basically. But
Because the country will not let that happen, the government. Just, at least, the least we can do is just kick them out of our land. Because this is our home, this is our land, and we deserve it.
What do you think about Palestinians?
That I hate them, and I wish they all died. We didn't stop, and we killed everyone.
You're gonna kill everyone?
Yes!
like, I don't know how much of this video is going to be wasted on this, but like, if he wants, like, we can go and replay the cartoons, or we can play unhinged shit that Palestinians say about Israelis. You can do this back and forth all day. People like Noah just contribute to the media environment that shows that the issue is intractable because they want to completely and totally blame one side and basically dehumanize them. I hate the expression, but say that like these people are just bloodthirsty savages who are only interested in the death and destruction of the other side for no appreciable reason. There's no reason. They're just genocidal freaks, like, by nature. Like, it's just cringe, but whatever.
Yes!
You guys are animals. You guys are animal terrorists.
You killed 10,000 kids.
10,000 terrorists that would grow up to be the next 10,000 kids that would grow up to be the next terrorists. That's what it is.
Really?
Because it's Palestine?
But I'm Palestinian. Does that mean I'm a terrorist?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm a terrorist.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want Palestinians in Gaza?
Like, what? This girl back here looks like she's 9 years old. How old are these people? Why are we... Or he's... Well, no. He's using it to illustrate that, like, Israeli people, Jewish Israeli people, because he wouldn't say the same thing about the Arab Palestinians that live in Israel. He's just saying that Jewish people are, to their core, a genocidal freak people. That's the argument. Like, it's pretty crazy, but whatever. And then also, again, the infinite curiosity given to the Palestinian side. What would drive a people? What would drive a people to actually be that hateful of Israel? Like, let's look at the history. And then you look at the Israelis. What would drive a people? No. They're just genocidal freaks. And it's like, okay.
Yes.
All of them?
Yes.
Oh my God.
We've seen all of this, which is why the whole "no, I didn't" defense doesn't hold up, because, you know, yes, you did. We have you on video during this that everyone saw spreading propaganda that's been used to justify that.
It's so vile to deny the suffering.
Oh, he didn't read this full report. We already went over this on stream. I think the first time, I guess he didn't watch my stream, or he doesn't give a fuck. But the UN had the special rapporteur of violence against women and girls, whatever, I don't fucking know the whole abbreviation. They had 2 weeks to conduct this investigation, and they felt with a high level of probability that different rapes had been committed across the entirety of the October 7th attack theater, but they didn't have enough time to see if those orders came from the top down, essentially. But in specific areas of the report, because they investigated different kibbutzes, and they investigated different areas where attacks had happened, including obviously the Nova Festival site, they said that they couldn't find conclusive evidence here, so they just cite parts of those just to pretend that there is no evidence that the other people were citing. The UN was saying that there were credible evidences of multiple rapes having occurred, but okay.
Trauma of the victims just because you need your heroes at Hamas to be perfect.
My friends, defeating our brutal enemies requires both courage and clarity. Clarity begins by knowing the difference between good and evil. And these monsters, they rape women, they burnt babies alive. Many anti-Israel protesters, many choose to stand with evil. They stand with Hamas. They stand with rape and murders.
The Gazan Health Ministry, which, by the way, Gaza Health Ministry is run by Hamas organization. I think a lot of people are all too happy to not look too deep into these things, but again, Gaza Health Ministry is...
So again, this is just no one not being aware of the record, I guess. Its numbers have historically been considered reliable by the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and Human Rights Watch. So when they say that the Gaza Health Ministry numbers are reliable, what they're saying is they look at the Israeli numbers, then they look at the Gaza numbers, and they make sure that the Gaza numbers are what the Gaza numbers say they are, and then they say, well, they're reliable. They don't actually do any independent fact-checking. We've read those underlying reports. They don't, right? That's how they verify the numbers. They ask them the numbers, they tell them the numbers, they say, okay, well, fine, that's right, and they just take it at word. If you don't believe me, or if you think that I'm wrong, then go find how they verify the numbers. We've read it. That's what they do. Also, there's a big oopsie that happened in this war, is that it's almost certain that there are two bodies. It's the Gazan Health Ministry, and then there's one other one that's the media arm. It's not the Gaza Health Ministry. It's another one. What am I thinking of? Somebody give me the name of the second one. You guys. Gaza Health. I forget the names. One is like the media arm and the other is like the hospital. Like one is like more, is it the Gaza Media Office versus the Gaza Health Ministry? I don't remember which one it was. I think it was the Health Ministry was lying about the distribution of deaths that were happening in Gaza. For instance, what they were doing is every single day there were deaths reported. It seemed like they were accurately reporting the amount of dead men, and then they would just fill up the rest with like women and children, like even in arbitrary portions. Like there was a way to look at this via data analysis where when you looked at it, it was very obvious what was happening, that there was a minimum amount of people dead per day, and that in order to hit that dead per day amount, they would just add however many women or children they needed to make up the number. And what they ended up doing is they rescinded the breakdown of men, women, and children by the end, but they kept the absolute number the same. So it's just like, what the f is going on here? Why are we relying on these numbers if we already admitted to lying about the amount of dead women and children? Why would we even accept that? There was an interesting article. I don't like to cite it because this is a right-leaning, it is a right-leaning Israeli source. I think it's called Tablet. Is it Tablet? Bro, it's been so long. But there's a guy that does an analysis of the numbers, and they did end up rescinding, the GMO, I believe, did end up rescinding their breakdown, and they just don't talk about the breakdown anymore. They just report the quote-unquote raw numbers, whatever the f that means. It might have been this, where every single day they basically reported like the same amount of people dead, which is strange because obviously some days have more attacks and some days don't have attacks or whatever. And what they found was that there is likely some amount of like reported dead in terms of like some number, and they would do like men, they would say that they're men that are dead for these, and then for the number that they wanted to invent, they would just, all of these, 100% of these would be women and children, because when they went to revise these numbers based on the confirmed casualty account, the numbers for women and children fell dramatically, like massively. So like the idea that we would rely on these, but rely on these numbers as being completely credible is a little silly. But I mean, there's definitely, civilians have definitely been killed in the war, though. The casualty count and the death count for civilians is likely very high in Gaza, which is not good. It sucks, but...
Is Hamas. There was more Jews displaced than Palestinians during the Nakba.
We have you on video attacking and delegitimizing the only groups in the world militarily resisting that.
Wait, Tablet is American Jewish, not Israeli? Oh, I thought that it was an Israeli publication. It's American. Okay.
And delegitimizing the only groups in the world militarily resisting that with arguments plucked.
This is just propaganda. So to be clear, Yemen, the Houthis are not militarily resisting the. That's just not. They're not doing anything to help anybody in Palestine or in Gaza. That's just bullshit. They were just committing attacks in the ocean against ships. That's it. Stated reason was apparently maybe because of the Gaza Strip, but it's more likely they're just getting orders from Hassan, not from Hassan, although maybe from Hassan, from Iran. But it's like, this is a ridiculous argument.
Than Palestinians during the Nakba.
We have you on video attacking and delegitimizing the only groups in the world militarily resisting that with arguments plucked directly from the U.S. State Department, the #1 material supporter of the.
Like, just because an area, especially when it comes to Israel, holy shit. Just because a source is cited from a particular link doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong. When it comes to Israel, you probably have to read the underlying material. Sometimes there is correct information, but they reach bad conclusions. Sometimes it's correct information and correct conclusions, but with a bad application of international law. The UN is especially guilty of this. Or sometimes it's just bad information that was gathered in a stupid way, and they're not like forthcoming in the conclusion about that. But you could, if you read the whole report, you'll see what's going on. It just depends. But especially for this conflict, unfortunately, I think you have to read a lot of the underlying material because it's hard to just read something and take it at face value.
We have you on video attacking and delegitimizing the most prominent media figures in the YouTube space who have been advocating against the and breaking down the propaganda used to justify it.
Hassan loves all terrorists.
We have you on video running defense for the primary architects of the.
Just the other day, Bibi fired a really good guy that a lot of people are pissed about. And he
Oh my God. People are mad about this good guy comment because Yoav Gallant was the Minister of Defense for the majority of this war. And so arguably you can say, well, he's not a good guy because the war is bad or whatever. But the reason why they're saying this is because I believe it was reported. I don't know if it ended up being true, but I believe it was reported that the reason why he was fired is because Gallant was like, was like telling them to heed, like they needed to be more cautious. Not, I was gonna say cautious. They need to be more cautious when I think it was like going back into, or it might have actually been him saying they shouldn't be using letting aid in or whatever as a way to fight against Hamas that's left in the Gaza Strip. And then I think he got fired for that. That's what was reported at the time when she was saying this. So she wasn't just saying like, oh, Yoav Golan is like such a great, awesome person and he's so good and blah, blah, blah. Like that was the reason why she was saying this. But again, it's all just like sucked out of context. Like it's retarded. Destiny's very informed. He's just super bad faith on this topic. True, Zach. I am. Yes, I'm so bad faith.
Fired him because they had a disagreement, and that's like so Trump coded.
Well, he was like a moderating voice in the war room.
Yeah.
Like you're taking quotes from this guy, a complete siege on Gaza. I think these quotes that are coming here might have been like on October like 10th. Like I think that this might have literally been days after October 7th. I think because I think some of these quotes I think got used by South Africa and their ICJ application. So it's like, but okay, good one, dude. Because this was over, like this was years ago. Clearly that didn't happen. You didn't see a ton of people dying due to starvation or lack of electricity or whatever, right? So something clearly is not connecting here if this ended up not being the case, right? But
we have you on video attempting to portray the perpetrator of that as some kind of beautiful, free, diverse, democratic state.
We're planning to go to Israel in June with my parents and all the kids. It's going to be such a great trip. And I'm actually really excited to go there. I want to show you guys.
You haven't been there in so long.
It's been a long time. What I want to do is show you guys how I see Israel, because you don't see that. When you listen to Hassan and you hear all these like mega lefties talking about it like it's some super racist, like crazy, like Jim Crow style of society. Like, I can't wait to show you guys how beautiful, how multicultural, how like free it feels for people, or just it's a beautiful place. It is. It's one of the most diverse places I've ever been.
These people all seem to believe that in order for someone to back a they need to like look into the camera and say, I support I think it's good. More of that, please. And while we do have examples of certain parties to the conflict here doing just that, like Destiny and Asmongold.
I'm not going to cry a fucking river when people who have that's big.
Oh, please quote my please quote the random comment I made like months before October 7th happened. Please, please let that be the video play. Please.
Into their laws.
With Wes, by the way, there.
Genocided.
Also, please just include the part where I say, F it, I'm pro-genocide, I guess. And then not the part afterward where I say, it seems like the conflict is incredibly intractable and it's not going to end until one side completely annihilates the other side. Please, 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 please. I'm edging myself right now to this.
Don't give a f. They're terrible people.
I'm pro-genocide. Yes! Like, it sounds really shitty, but like, I think that Israel should just drop its fucking board. Okay, wait. You've got like 4 more words and then cut the clip. 4 more words and then cut the clip, please. Orders about where it is now, and basically Palestinians can go live in another place.
And then cut it.
Yes! Oh, I cummed all over. Yes. Based.
And an effective way to back a doesn't look like that. Mainstream Western outlets don't say those Palestinian kids deserve to be killed. No, they say that some kids died when bombs dropped, that Israel says it was dropping on Hamas, which is a U.S. designated organization. The mainstream Western media doesn't say that there are no innocent civilians in Gaza. They simply quote the death tolls as being reported by the Hamas, aka run health ministry, and then report uncritically the IDF saying that most of them are soldiers actually, and soldiers are terrorists, by the way, so who's to
Destiny, the months before October 7th is the worst defense. The actual defense that it was not a serious statement. If it was serious, it would be bad at any point in time. No. The reason why I clarify that it was months before October 7th is, one, I mean, like, it was a half-serious statement, like, but the full statement is that it seems like it's going to keep going until one side kills the other. So I guess somebody's going to genocide somebody, which was the full statement. But the reason why it's important to clarify it's before October 7th is because people cite that quote as though October 7th happened, and then my response was they should go the Palestinians in response to October 7th. That's how that quote is presented as, and that's how most people take it as.
Say what's actually true. The mainstream Western media doesn't say that Yemeni children deserve to die because they're all Houthi terrorists. They simply cite the Houthi-run health ministry, aka run health ministry. So when the US and Saudi Arabia kill those children, it's a sad event in the overall morally righteous fight against terrorists. is bad, remember? And terrorists are the bad guys. So if some kids died while they were going after terrorists, you know, I guess that's just war. We saw the same response of "no, I didn't" from Mutahar of the large YouTube channel Some Ordinary Gamers. When Hassan Piker shared my video on his Instagram story, Mutahar responded to this post writing, "I get watching other people's videos is all you're really good at, but try vetting out slander before promoting. I have never defended or backed the Israeli on innocent Gazans, never will I ever." Following this, there was a bit of a back and forth. Hassan responded to Mutahar on Twitter, writing, "In your only video
What'd you say right after the cut? If somebody wants to find the original video or a clip, they can. But I'm pretty sure right after I basically say something along the lines of like, nah, I don't know, man. It's pretty hard. It just seems like both sides, though, are going to fight forever until some side kills the other. In which case, I guess I might prefer the Israeli side over the Palestinian side. I don't even know if I go as far to say that. But basically, I'm just saying that like it feels like the conflict is intractable. Somebody can find it. Somebody has a clip of it somewhere.
On Gaza, you admit to not knowing about politics, you try to cover Israel-Palestine as drama slop for a centrist audience, you defend Asmongold for his inferior cultures and comment, then attack pro-Palestinian voices. Mutahar wrote back, "Yes, I do admit to not being an expert on the topic. I didn't cover it as a drama since it isn't one. Serious situations with dead people and attacks happening every day. I just don't downplay rapes and sugarcoat violent organizations like..."
Do the U.S. strikes even get any children in the most recent strikes on the Houthis? Last time it was 100% military bases, correct? Last time when the one big one that Biden did was literally on like missile installation things or whatever, and I think it was only military. I don't even know if a person died. If it was just like a couple militants, I think. But this last attack was in Sana'a, which is the capital city of North Yemen, or with the Houthi-controlled Yemen. And I think 50 plus people died. It wouldn't surprise me if some civilians died in that because it's the capital city and everything. So I don't know.
Like you. Also didn't defend Asmin in vid. Later, Hassan wrote, "We were a year into the here. This was your only video on the topic. It downplayed and ran defense for Asmongold's takes, while the bulk of your commentary revolved around how evil the pro-Palestinian streamers were from clips you compiled off of Snark Reddits." Mutahar's final response was, "It's almost as if the bulk of the comments..."
Does the fact that Israel receives so much support from Western governments make you sympathetic to the Palestinian cause? Not in particular. Just because somebody receives more support, somebody else doesn't make me more sympathetic. I am sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, though. I'm sympathetic to the Israeli one as well. My big complaint about this, as it always has been and will always continue to be, is one of the biggest annoying things about this is your rabid Zionists will always portray this as being way more simple than it actually is, and your rabid pro-Palestinians will always portray this as being more simple than it actually is. And these people involved here, Noah Samson and Hassan, are part of the problem, and is one of the reasons why the West should just off from ever talking about this issue. It's not even that they portray it as being more simple, actually, and I'm incorrect when I say that. It's that they portray it as being more one-sided than it actually is. Both sides have their myths, their stories that they tell, and they conveniently leave out everything having to do with the justification of the other side's reasons for fighting, and then that's it. It's just annoying and stupid.
Commentary matched what the video was titled and centered up.
Houthis are causing the crisis in Yemen, right? Am I losing my mind? I mean, like, they kind of are, but the reality is like Yemen has been fucked for 100 years. Yemen has had a lot of back and forth fighting for a long time. It's a place. So, like, for instance, in '67, in the 6-Day War, when people say that Nasser didn't really want to fight, at least not at that point in time, which is probably true, one of the reasons why is because Nasser had literally just committed tens of thousands of Egyptian troops down to fight in Yemen for other civil war stuff that was happening down there. Like, Yemen has just been a fucked place for a while, a long time.
About Twitch allowing violent and unfiltered rhetoric from your camp on its platform, the clips were actually sourced from the creators who streamed them. So what do we make of this exchange? Well, first,
challenge this Noah retard to a verbal duel. So he had a conversation with Vosh once and it went so bad he vowed to never, ever, ever have a debate again, which I don't blame him. But the issue is that, like, he'll never talk to me because he thinks that'll be really aggressive. I don't have to be aggressive. I can always have a chill convo. I don't mind actually doing back and forth video things like this, although I'm a bit at a disadvantage because obviously he can take the time to research his points and I'm just responding live. However, I mean, if he never says anything of substance, it's annoying. So I imagine the conversation would be just as annoying, like live, but whatever. Why do you call the Houthis the government of Yemen when it's not the globally recognized one? I don't know, because they've been controlling North Yemen for, what, a couple decades now, no? There's like, Yemen has been divided, I think, for a long time. There's North Yemen and there's South Yemen. South Yemen, I think, is the official, like, what people call Yemen, but it's not like Hezbollah in Lebanon, where Lebanon had a real government, a real capital city, like it was an actual country, and then Hezbollah came in and it started like with shit and taking over parts of the territory. I think they started in the late 80s, early 90s, I think. But Yemen has always been divided and fucked. Yemen is just very fucked. At Destiny, I value your ability to deflate oversimplification from both sides on this, but are you concerned of being an enlightened centrist on this issue? The truth here isn't going to be in the middle. No, because when I say something is nuanced or I say something is complicated, I will talk about why it's nuanced and I will talk about why it's complicated. Most of the times when people say a thing is nuanced, they do that as a way to escape having any substantive conversation about the particular thing. I'll talk about the thing. I imagine it'll come up here. I did when I responded to his video last time. So
First, Mudahar denied covering the as drama, but that's exactly what he did. He's never once uploaded a video covering this topic, except for when that covered.
Mudahar doesn't really do politics. I think right? I don't think he does. Or it's like more social commentary stuff. I think the reason why Hassan ended up getting covered by him was because Hassan was doing stuff like on streamer channels related to just like blatant coverage, which I think any reasonable person can recognize is a little bit fucked up.
Was filtered through a smear campaign that was making the rounds in the commentary community about a
This is called a smear campaign, and I bet Noah's going to continue to say these things out of context, out of context. To this day, not a single Hassan slurper has ever been able to demonstrate any of the things that have ever been taken out of context, ever. All of them seem to be in context, and Noah himself is doing the same things as being a supporter of like groups, arguably. Now, if you want to make the argument that Hassan does sometimes, that, well, a designated group can be anything, like the ANC and Nelson Mandela were designated groups, fine, that's based. I don't think that all U.S. designated groups are necessarily like the worst thing in the world, or maybe you could even justify some other things. But to compare the ANC to Hamas is ridiculous. It's a ridiculously stupid comparison. The ANC was not trying to eviscerate and remove all white people from South Africa, or intentionally targeting and killing as many civilians as they can, or inducing as much civilian death on their side as possible, or hijacking airplanes all over the world, or doing assassinations in Olympic events in Germany. Like, it's such a unbelievably stupid comparison.
Content creator they all don't like. You know, Hassan bad. He denies defending Asmongold in his video, once again making no effort to actually defend himself on that point. But that's also false. Mudahar whitewashed as—
Wait, Lonerbox says apparently he live edited this video. Why would you set up your audience by telling them protests and divestments haven't worked and it's time to escalate, but not elaborate on what the escalation involves? Wait, I'm gonna play this on my speakers. I'm gonna grab a drink of water. One second.
People living in the West have the most power over anyone else in the world to stop the— We are living in the belly of the beast. We have direct geographical, physical access to the politicians, the propagandists, the weapons companies, and the supply chains that are facilitating this. Protesting is great. We should keep doing that. But also, you know, I feel like we have to be honest with ourselves. 17 months in, and what is protesting actually accomplished? Raising awareness, sure. Divestment, yeah, in some places. But really, politically, materially, nothing. Israel just killed the most children in its history in a single night with total impunity, with a deafening silence among the Western media. If we want this to stop, it's time to escalate. That's all I'm saying. So anyways, yes.
See, you can lay it out very easily, one sentence at a time. It's quite clear. We in the West have direct physical access.
Yeah, but he's doing the Jordan Peterson thing of leading you to the argument. Well, how do you escalate against a country that's doing? What are you supposed to do next? Who knows? But he won't actually say it, you know? Whatever.
Asmongold's comments further than anyone else, really. He went so far as to change the content of what Asmongold actually said to make it seem like he wasn't talking about Palestinians when he was.
In this situation, one could, you know, if they were to extend the charitability, could say that Asmongold was probably referring to extremists in the Islamic religion.
Even Asmongold himself admitted that that's what he said when he apologized. This is why he was banned. Now, whether Mudahar stands by this characterization of Asmongold's genocide—
To be clear, and trust me, I do not want to be charitable to Asmonslav. And I don't know, somebody can go back and find my comments on it. I'm pretty sure I was critical of Asmongold's comments because they did reek of like Western cultural superiority, which I think you shouldn't do as part of the West. I think it's a bad habit that we do in the West. But Asmongold's argument was essentially, it was a misunderstanding, I think, of all of Islam. But his argument was basically, as long as there are people in Islam who think that it's part of their religion to kill all of us if we don't agree with them, then I think we can kill all of them. Who cares? That was his argument. Now, there are a lot of issues with this argument, not the least of which is all people who are of the religious faith of Islam, don't want to kill all people in the West. But I think that was the meat of his argument if you look into it. Not just that every single innocent Palestinian who doesn't want anything to do with war should be murdered. That now, to be fair, what I'm giving you is this kind of charitable reading. I don't even know actually if I would say a charitable reading. That's clearly what Asmongold meant. He said as much. But still, for a variety of reasons, especially with his audience, this is a super problematic statement that he probably shouldn't be making. I think that's super fair to say as well. But to try to like rope Mudahar's feelings about this issue into like Asmongold's like very sloppy statement is a little bit silly. Although keep in mind, you have to be careful here too when you're Mudahar, because Noah is probably really jealous of the fact that the most he can ever get for minority status is some sort of neurodivergency. So he can say he has ADHD or autism, and then sexually maybe he can say he's non-binary, and then that's all he's got because he's just white. And Mudahar is way browner than he is, which is probably making him seethe and burn with rage inside. But
genocidal rhetoric or not is a different question. But he did do that, and the record shows this. His video is still uploaded on his channel. You can go watch it. Denying this seems to be just indicative of a lack of reflection on his part. Entirely predictable, but worth noting nonetheless. The "no, I didn't" defense is the expected response from centrists and liberal Zionists alike, but I don't know how well it'll hold up in court. I didn't back. How could you say that? I just sat silently the entire time it happened, except for the one time I spoke up, which was actually to attack pro-Palestine activists with bad faith smears that originate from a community of openly...
Do you think that the sentiment of superiority is ban-worthy in your community? Like, would I ban somebody for it? If I see people making like Western culture is inherently superior to Eastern culture argument, I don't know if I ban for it. It depends on how they present it, but I usually discourage those arguments. I just think it's a very one-dimensional view of the world.
Genocidal Zionists.
I'm pro-genocide. How does he manage to misunderstand everything? Is he stupid or intentional? I mean, it's an intentional propaganda strategy, but I mean, I'm sure to some extent he probably sincerely believes it because he's spent so much time doing this type of like propaganda. It's always hard for me to understand for these guys, like how intentional is it? I would say the fact that they avoid so heavily any sort of actual conversation about it makes me feel like it's a little bit more intentional, because why are you so afraid of talking about it unless you know you're full of shit? But I don't know, that's
terrible people.
Best of luck to you in your legal endeavors should you pursue them. I don't know how well that'll hold up, but have fun, I guess. In his last tweet, Mutahar seems to deny his participation in the smear campaign, writing, "The clips were sourced from the creators who streamed them." This is false. Mutahar did not source these clips from Hassan's stream. He sourced these clips directly from the smear website. He cited the website out loud and said, "Go check it out, guys."
There's a website known as danclancysucks.com, where it goes through a treasure trove of some of the most popular streamers on the site. One of the most popular political streamer, Hassan Piker.
As we went over this web...
Do you think that a large part of this is that the Israelis are white? Is Israel, if Israelis were brown and black, what would the outrage be the same? Kind of, but you got to be careful. Remember, Marxist-Leninists, okay, MLs that do this oppressor-oppressee dynamics don't need you to be white or black. They don't care as much about that. What they care more about are the oppressor-oppressee dynamics, and generally that'll come through the lens of pro-America's enemies versus anti-America is generally how it comes through. Now, in order to appeal to a wider base of people, MLs will try to make these claims that Israelis are white. That's a very big ML, or it's a very big like pro-Pali calling card that you say things like, these Jews need to go back to New York, these Jews need to go back to Europe, these Jews don't belong here. The reason why you're saying that is because you're trying to make the claim that these Jews are of white European origin anyway, they don't even belong in the Middle East, they're not from here. Now the reality is most Jews are of Middle Eastern descent, because they fled there after the Israeli War of Independence because they were getting pogromed and shit, and they didn't want to be in these other Arab countries. So most of the Jews that are there today are not white Jews, or of the Ashkenazi descent. They're I always mix up Sephardic and Mizrahi. One of these is a religious thing, and one of these is ethics, ethnicity. What is ML? ML is Marxist-Leninist, or more commonly people refer to them colloquially as tankies. These are the hardcore like commie people that like hate the West. So like Hassan is like a tanky. He's an ML, Marxist-Leninist.
Website is a compilation of out-of-context clips and arguments attacking pro-Palestine Korea.
Wait, Sephardic equals from Spain. Wait, what am I thinking of? What are the two I'm looking for? Hold on. Mizrahi versus... Okay, it is Mizrahi Jews is what I'm thinking of. Sorry, okay.
Creators that openly embraces the support of genocidal Zionist organizations like the ADL and genocidal Zionist politicians like Richie Torres.
Why do they call them tankies? 1952? Was it the Hungarian Revolution? Might be 1956. When this revolution happened, in order to quash it, I think that the USSR helped by basically rolling tanks in, and they were literally like running people over and killing civilians that were trying to protest the government there that I think was basically a puppet of the Soviet Union. And then the people that supported this, I think this is where the term tanky comes from, is yeah.
Community from which all of these allegations originate is that of a content creator who says things like this.
He is interviewing the guy who's about to go do. Oh, even Noah's bought into the destiny is the origin of every bad thing. Yes, it is me. Yes. Hello. Hello. Welcome. It is me, the origin of every single bad thing ever, by the way.
Is that of a content creator who says things like this.
He is interviewing the guy who's about to go do some shit to get himself killed, basically. That's what's going to happen. We know from this point, that's what's going to happen. So he walks away, gets back a little bit, and then he sets up behind this thing, right? Is this concealment, I guess? Not cover, concealment, right? Because I think the tank's over here. So now he can capture the footage right here. He sees the guys walking, knowing that they're about to get shot, because that's what's going to happen. And then eventually they get shot and everything is, this is it. It's like act 1, 2, and 3. It's like all here. Yep. Now this guy is down. He's dead. These guys are like, bring in the family. Bring in the wife. They're not even running. They're not even like cowering and running away and screaming in fear. There's like, okay, well, they did it. We got our shots. Okay, is this guy done? Oh, well, okay. Well, we brought the white flag so we can put that over the bleeding part. Assuming he got shot in it, actually, right? And then this guy, what, is this guy running back to grab the wife? Yep.
By this stage, the man's wife, his widow, has heard what happened.
And then, like, what does this mean? The wife has heard what happened. Like, bro, this is crazy. I'm sorry. The tracking live movement shot of the lady running up to her dead husband? Like, what is this?
By this stage, the man's wife, his widow, has heard what happened.
Somebody went back and told her, right? The 5 martyrs that walked forward, you know, your husband was the unlucky guy. He drew the short stick today, so come forward, cry for us on camera. Do you think the guy intentionally wanted to get killed? No, I don't think he wanted to die. I don't think they thought. I don't think they were
shot at,
thinking they were going to die, but they probably were hoping to get shot at, or maybe. So you're saying the woman was acting? I don't think the woman was acting. She probably was sincerely sad. Her husband got killed, but I think they were farming TikTok clips. I mean, remember these people.
They do.
These people. I mean, these people actually, like have suicide bombers. So it's not that big of a stretch to imagine that they would be willing to get shot. However, now I haven't gone down this road because this is way more conspiratorial. It would require me to make a lot more assumptions, but it's also possible he didn't get shot, right? Now, do we know the name of the guy? Is he actually dead? Do we even know if that's his wife? These are a whole bunch of questions that would be valid. Now, if I was way more on the pro-Zionist side, I would be asking those questions. Who is this guy? Do we even know if he's actually dead? Like, we don't actually see the wound. Right? It seems like they don't have any problem showing anything else. Like, why just the white flag so that it can look all bloody? Like, show us the actual gunshot. You have no problem showing other violence, right? What Pallywood means is that... And the comparison for that is, remember that one strike in the Rafah camp before they did their invasion, but they moved everybody north first? The people were literally shaking headless babies in front of the camera. It's like, holy bro, Jesus Christ. You're capturing intentional video footage to sell a certain narrative about what's going on, basically. So Pallywood might be, well, this, right? So the idea is that like 4 innocent civilians are like walking up and you just want like a clip here of the IDF shooting them for no reason because they're civilians with white flags. And you kind of ignore the fact that like, okay, well, they're in a battle zone in an area they were told to evacuate from, and they're going back to try to release somebody that was captured. Like that's like Pallywood, I think. You're essentially provoking the enemy to take what is largely a justified action and then trying to say that it's like indiscriminate civilian because the area that those guys, I don't know if anybody wants to find the story, but the things that those 4 guys wanted to go up and talk to the IDF about in an area that they were already told they couldn't go in was because one of the guys' brothers had been captured by the IDF and they didn't like that, so they were going to go talk to them and tell them to release his brother, which is in the middle of the war zone, is like obviously stupid. But again, whether you want to talk about if every Israeli civilian death or every Palestinian civilian death can be justified on the Israeli side, the answer is obviously no. Not only can you find clear mistakes, not only can you find reckless actions, I'm sure you can find intentional bad behavior, 100%, okay? But to ignore the fact that the Palestinian side is intentionally trying to provoke these exact film moments that they would literally have media and everything set up right before they're sending people to march toward, like they know that this is going to happen. It's the whole goal. To leave that out of the conversation, I just think is bizarre. It's not bizarre, it's intentional. It's like a setup. It's not fake, but they're doing it to themselves.
Speaking of that guy, Destiny.
Doesn't the IDF do the same thing, though? Like, why does it matter if they're clip farming? Isn't it important for them to document this stuff? No, the IDF does not clip farm. Israel does not clip farm. It was a big deal after October 7th, was getting footage and stuff from people was kind of hard. For a lot of it, they would just rush to bury the bodies, and it was why a lot of the forensic evidence got destroyed. It was a big issue with, I think they were called the Zaka volunteers, was the group of people that try to bury them as quickly as possible. And it resulted in the destruction of a lot of forensic evidence and crime scenes that were now harder to understand because they had buried those bodies so quickly. But you saw shockingly little footage of dead Israelis compared to what Palestinians will show. Well, they'll like live video record people being shot and killed. That's why I joke that the most effective piece of Israeli propaganda that ended up being released in the entirety of this recent war actually came from Hamas. And it was the video footage of that I don't know if she was raped, but that murdered German-Israeli girl in the back of that truck. It was probably some of the most troubling footage that came out of that whole war, and it was shot by Hamas. Israel sucks at doing Western propaganda. They suck shit at it. And Palestinians speak the language of the West so much better, largely due to all of the Soviet training that they had in the 60s, 70s, 80s, or whatever, to I guess, learn this. But
it's like a setup. It's not fake, but they're doing it to themselves.
Speaking of that guy, Destiny.
But they still exaggerated stories and stuff, right? Didn't they get the beheaded/burned babies thing wrong? No, my understanding is there was one, and then somebody turned this into 40. It was some French reporter that tweeted out the number 40, but that didn't originate with Israeli media. But also, like, just think, like, you're talking about, did they get some things wrong, whatever? I'm sure they did. And then they would be corrected afterwards. But, like, people still to this day, if you were to ask Noah Sampson, or if you were to ask Hassan, to this day, the Al-Ali hospital was initially reported worldwide as being a whole hospital. They got J-damned. I think that was what Hassan was watching when he said, that sounds like a J-dam, bro. That Israel intentionally targeted that hospital, blew it up and killed 500 people. And then later we found out, okay, it wasn't 500 people dead. I think it was like 300 casualties. Then we found out it wasn't a blown up hospital. It was a mortar shell thing that blew up in the parking lot. And then we find out it most likely came from PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is the second, party basically that exists in the Gaza Strip. It's Hamas, and then it's Palestinian Islamic Jihad, who fight with the Al-Qassam brigades, I think. Al-Quds force is Hamas, and the Al-Qassam brigades is PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. But it's like, whatever.
The genocidal Zionist criminal video game streamer. He also had a at responding to my video where he made some interesting points. Destiny criticized my characterization of the 2018 Gaza border protests as being overwhelmingly peaceful by citing instances of violent actions that protesters took part in during the 2018 border protests, or the Great March of Return, which were recognized by human rights organizations as being overwhelmingly peaceful.
Overwhelmingly peaceful. Just as a quick thing, because people love to talk about the Great March of Return, the peaceful March of Return. All of this is like the peaceful Great March of Return. Remember this, okay? This is all the peaceful Great March of Return.
Now, when I used the word overwhelmingly in my video, I used it as the word is meant to be used, which is to mean overwhelmingly, which means what the word means, which is...
Well, but no, because I think that every single one involved the tires being set on fire and like rocks being slung from slings and everything. I think every single one from the very beginning involved this. I don't know if he thinks the Great March of Return was one like protest, but it was, I believe it was every weekday on, or not, it wasn't every weekday. It was repeated weekly or bi-weekly for about a year, I think, until they finally called it off in 2019 March. Fuck, somebody can find this. But it was repeated over and over again. But I think almost all of these involved like some form of setting fire to tires that are wheeled up near the wall so that people can get close and try to cut through and plant IEDs, everything else. Now you can make the argument that it's mostly peaceful and that most of the people at the wall were peaceful. That is true. But I think I even said that in my response video. But this is true of like every riot, right? Every single riot, my guess is the vast majority of people in even a riot are peaceful. In a protest of 10,000, you only need 1,000 people rioting for it to be an insane riot. But that doesn't mean that all 10,000 people are breaking shit and stealing shit, just like a sizable portion of them are. But I mean, like, this is potatoes. If you want to say that they were mostly peaceful, I don't even have a problem with that. But don't lie and try to represent it as though it was like overwhelmingly peaceful with just a couple bad apples. That's just not the case.
Word is meant to be used, which is to mean overwhelmingly, which means what the word means, which is to a very great degree or with a great majority.
Like with this same characterization, right, you would say that January 6th was overwhelmingly peaceful. That is true. Wasn't it like almost 100,000 people at the Capitol? But there were only a couple thousand that went in. Overwhelmingly, it was peaceful, right? But you wouldn't really characterize J6 as a peaceful event. It was a riot. right? So it's a weird way to play with the word here. You're not really trying to provide further clarification on what was going on. You're just trying to obfuscate. That's what's happening.
Which is to a very great degree or with a great majority.
Overwhelmingly.
Some instances of violence during these protests do not contradict my use of this word. The protests were overwhelmingly nonviolent, which is exactly what the UN report found.
The protest camps.
I don't know. He says UN report there, but okay.
Set up along the fence can make you do a double take. In parts, they look like a community festival, a carnival, a fair, like a distant cousin to Burning Man.
I wonder if this was even during one of the days where they did the protests, because, wait, or is that, I can't tell what this is facing. Is this looking into Israel or is this looking into the Mediterranean? Because if it's not, or is this supposed to be like the border fence? I never went into Gaza, so, because if this is just looking into the ocean, well, of course you're not going to see anything because it's not looking at the walls. But there doesn't even look like there's very many people here for this right now, so I don't even know if the protest is going on. This looks like a setup for the protests right now, but okay, whatever.
Women prepare falafel sandwiches. Barbers give haircuts and trim beards. Lip syncers and dancers perform in the shade.
Also, remember, I thought we were manufacturing consent for a genocide. Why are you citing now a New York Times report? This because you agree with this one, but whatever.
Actors ham it up playing cruel Israeli soldiers. Families come with their children.
Based.
Ultimately, though, regardless of how the protests were characterized overall, the reason I brought them up in my video was as evidence that Israel has a history of intentionally targeting Palestinian civilians for slaughter. That's what the UN report found. Israeli snipers intentionally targeted medics, journalists, men, women, children, elderly people, and disabled people.
So here's like the easiest question from this, okay? So unlike him, I did read this entire UN report. The UN decided to engage in an incredibly stupid legal analysis of the Great March of Return, and the standards that they applied for the legal analysis were policing standards. Internationally, when we talk about police, what we tend to expect is a police officer isn't going to shoot at somebody unless their life is in danger or another person's life is in danger. So they didn't use a foreign policy analysis, or I'm sorry, an international humanitarian law analysis where you would say like an enemy combatant trying to attack a border, for instance, would be likely to be shot, right? In a policing thing, you can't shoot at somebody for trying to cross a border. For law of armed conflict, well, if the other person appears to be an enemy combatant and they're attacking your border and they're trying to sneak through, you can shoot them. So this was the form of analysis. This was the legal analysis. Somebody can link the UN report. I'm not going over the whole thing again on stream. But this is the legal analysis that the UN engaged in order to say that all of these deaths... Oh, actually, you can see it as part of it here. So the Convention on the Rights of the Child protects children's rights to life, peaceful assembly, expression, and the highest attainable standard of health, among other rights. The Commission found reasonable grounds to believe that Israel violated those rights when its forces used lethal force against children who did not pose an imminent threat of death or serious injury to others. They used that same frame of analysis for everybody. It had to be threat of death or serious injury because they looked at it as a policing event, not as a law of armed conflict event. Because at times, it's funny because... Israel will do the same thing, where Israel will view them as, well, actually, that's an occupied territory. That's why we can, for instance, blockade everything going on in the Gaza Strip. But then Israel will say, whoa, hold on, that's its own country. Hamas is the government. So, of course, we can attack them and blow their shit up, right? Israel likes to have this ambiguity as well. And then the UN will have the ambiguity where it's like, well, you know, actually, you're just the police there, okay? And you're not allowed to do these, like, crazy... You're not allowed to kill somebody for breaking over the border, but then also you're not just police, so you're an occupying force that's actually like a military presence, and so all these like everybody's retarded when it comes to this shit. But whatever. Here's the one thing I'll say, and maybe okay, I'm gonna do a danger here. Okay, I'm gonna do a danger. Although I feel like I've probably watched more of this, even the Great March of Return, than Noah has. Here's a thing that I think you can keep in mind. Noah will say over and over again, and people will say over and over again that Israel indiscriminately shoots at medics, they shoot at civilians, they shoot at all these people. Is there going to be any video footage of them just randomly shooting at a person in the middle of the crowd? Or does it always seem to be people who are being taken back from the fence? Because when you also read that UN report and you look at all the people they shot, one, I'm pretty sure Hamas and PIJ claims like half of them. And two, a lot of them are shot within 100 to 200 meters from the fence. They're not just sniping people out in the crowd of people, which is why most people standing there are like generally chill. It's usually people that are being brought back from the fence who are trying to break in. But maybe Noah will have new footage for us or show something else. Just keep that in mind though when you're watching stuff like this.
Targeted medics, journalists, men, women, children, elderly people, and disabled people. Cite whatever instances of property damage, tire burning, flag planting.
Oh, like, listen to this. Property damage. Property damage? It's a border. It's a militarized border. He said property, hold on.
Disabled people. Cite whatever instances of property damage, tire burning.
Tire burning is to literally provide cover from Israeli snipers or from Israeli surveillance so that you can get through and penetrate the border.
Flag planting.
When he says flag planting, I don't think I brought up flag planting. Flag planting is a thing that they do though, and when they do it, what they do is they'll plant a Palestinian flag, but then they put bombs underneath it, so that if you try to take out the flag, you get killed. You can literally see, I spelled like 7 words wrong in this. I think this is in the West Bank, but sometimes they'll plant flags here, and then when you go to remove it, they've got IEDs underneath these things. So he's just, again, if you want to say the IDF does bad stuff, that's fine. Like, I'm sure we can find examples of this happening. I'm not going to sit here and say the IDF is perfect or that Israel's perfect. I'm sure we can find it, especially now in the political climate, a lot of really bad things that are happening. But to try to pretend like the other side is just this innocent victim, it's the ML lens of oppressor and oppressee. So that means the Palestinians can do no wrong. Rape is the language of the unheard, okay? Rape is the language that resistance speaks, and it's justified because you can justify all actions through the oppressor-oppressee dynamic. It's so cringe and so stupid.
Rock throwing if you want. These are irrelevant to the fact that Israel intentionally targeted thousands of civilians with sniper fire. The commission interviewed an international journalist covering the demonstrations at the Malika site who described the scene that day. What was notable was the amount of injured people and the slow, methodical every few minutes, you would hear a shot ring out and you would see someone fall.
Okay, show us some video then. Because everybody here is video recording everything, right? They've all got phones. They're all recording it. There's journalists on the ground. Like, where are all these people in the middle of the crowd just getting sniped? The funny thing is there is at least one example of this happening because I've seen it. But the vast majority of the people, like 99.9% of people getting shot, are people that are near the border, people that are near the fence that are trying to break through.
And then another shot, and another person fell. It went on for hours. I saw a man who had been shot in the throat. I didn't see it happen, but I saw the immediate aftermath. He was covered in blood. I saw a man who had been shot in the head. There was a constant stream of bloody bodies being carried back towards the ambulances. It was surreal and endless.
Carried back towards the ambulances. He accidentally gave it away. Carried back from the border, because that's what they were trying to do.
It became almost normal. It was happening so often. A shot, a person falling, people carrying the body away. The number of wounded was astonishing. I couldn't say how many people I saw who were shot because it was so high. I have covered wars in Syria, Yemen, Libya, and I've never seen anything like this.
Because you'll never see anything like this, because in Syria, there's no shot you would do this because you would get annihilated. There would be no groups of people throwing rocks and at Syrian soldiers. They would dig out a ditch. I'm just kidding. They would make you and your family dig out a ditch, and then they would kill all of you, okay? You wouldn't see this happening in Yemen because you'd probably be starving to death because Ansar Allah or the Houthis are stealing all of your food. And you definitely wouldn't see this happening in Libya. I don't know the conditions now, but before, if you were trying in Libya, Gaddafi would say that you were drinking LSD out of Coke cans, and then he would put you in a dark site and he would torture and murder you, okay? So no, you wouldn't see this anywhere else. That is true, but you're not asking the question of why. Like, you have to be so blind, or you just don't give a fuck about brown people, which they don't, to think that, like, you're talking about the Middle East. It's not like this shit is happening in the middle of Brooklyn, or this shit is happening in the middle of the United States. Like, my God, this is just uniquely the most horrid, crazy shit ever. Like earlier in that Lonerbox clip, he's saying we need to escalate. We need to do regime change in Israel. We need to do regime change, violent regime change for Netanyahu, not for Saddam Hussein, not for Assad, not for Gaddafi, not for the Houthis, but for Netanyahu, yes? Come on, seriously? It's so me, dude.
The slow, methodical it was just shocking. Presenting this fact is only a one-sided history if you think intentional civilian targeting is somehow warranted due to other unrelated instances of violence.
During armed conflict or occupation, international humanitarian law permits inter alia, willful killing and willfully causing great suffering unless undertaken lawfully in self-defense, because they're analyzing this as a police action. That's why they say all of these were unjustified. It says right here, in self-defense, intentionally killing a civilian, not directly participating in hostilities. In this hostilities here is a war crime. The hostilities have to be like you're either attacking some other citizen or you're like attacking a cop. There has to be like a life or death situation presented to you. The commission found reasonable grounds to believe that the individual members of the Israeli security forces, in the course of their response to the demonstrations, killed and gravely injured civilians who were neither directly participating in hostilities nor posing an imminent threat. This is not hostilities insofar as breaking across the border. It's hostilities insofar as how you would define a policing action, which is why this report is so dumb.
Which definitionally cannot be true. This is, of course, if we're taking international law into account.
But they didn't do international law for this analysis. That's fine because you didn't even read the report, which is fine. I don't expect you to.
Destiny's a Zionist, so that's not high on his priority list.
And it's not on any Zionist priority list because clearly nobody gives a f about international law, so LOL.
Destiny has had similar Israel glazing-induced English language difficulties in the past. He had this same response when Norman Finkelstein brought up the 2018 border protests in the Lex Friedman Israel.
We never got to talk about these in detail because Finkelstein couldn't, because he's not well read on it either. He's not well read on almost anything related to this. There's a reason why he just has to name call and shout me down, but...
Palestine debate early last year.
In 2018, there was the Great March of Return in Gaza. By all reckonings of human rights organizations and journalists who were there, it was overwhelmingly nonviolent. Along the Gaza perimeter, there was Israel's best trained snipers. Correct?
I don't know best trained.
Like when he says along the border, I don't even know if Benny Morse must have been aware of this because I'm sure he would have lived it. But I don't know if Benny is aware of how aggressive. I don't even know what he says in this part. But like, why were there snipers there? What were they shooting at? Who were they shooting at? What was going on there at the border? What was happening?
Snipers.
Fine.
Snipers.
Okay. All right.
The
Because
editorializing
hey,
support.
laugh. It's hilarious. The story's so funny.
You're lying about
It's
the Great
so
March of Return
funny.
had aspects
Okay.
of violence to it.
Okay.
According, even the UN says it themselves.
Okay.
But you only collect what the UN says that you like.
See the problem?
Oh, okay. Wait, the UN says it's violent. Okay, well, what's your response to that? Ha! You're a dum-dum. You're a dum-dum.
Mr. Morelli is you don't know the English language.
Got me.
I can read from the
Did you
UN
hear-
website
did
itself.
I
In regards
say-
to the Great March of Return,
Please
they said,
Oh, and I have a quote from the UN.
while the vast majority of protesters have acted in a peaceful manner,
No, listen to what
during
he
most
said.
protests,
Did-
dozens have
did you
approached the
just
fence,
agree with
attempting
me,
to
Mr.
damage it,
Said the
burning
wall-
fires,
Did I
throwing
say
stones, and
overwhelmingly
Molotov cocktails
nonviolent?
towards Israeli forces, and
Okay.
flying incendiary
Okay.
kites and balloons
Okay.
into Israeli territory. The latter resulted
Yeah,
in
but-
extensive
but
damage
you
to
don't-
agricultural
you-
land and
okay.
nature reserves inside
Okay.
Israel,
Yep.
and risked the latter fails
With
attempting
me,
to
Mr.
damage it in a peaceful manner.
No, listen to what
During
he
most
said.
protests, dozens
Listen to what I say here, as I'm reading from this UN thing. Most protests, so he's saying vast majority of the protesters, yes, but most of the protests involved violence. He's playing with the English language here in such a dishonest way to manipulate the point. It's so gross.
have
Did you
approached the
just
fence,
agree with
attempting
me,
to
Mr.
damage it,
said the
burning
wall-
fires,
Did I
throwing
say
stones and
overwhelmingly
Molotov cocktails
nonviolent?
towards Israeli forces, and
Okay.
flying incendiary
Okay.
kites and balloons
Okay.
into Israeli territory. The latter resulted
Yeah,
in
but-
extensive
but you
damage to
don't-
agricultural
you-
land and
okay.
nature reserves inside
Okay.
Israel, and risked the lives
Yeah,
of Israeli
because
civilians.
Mr.
Some incidents of
Mr.
throwing of
Borelli-
explosives
Yeah,
also
talk
been reported.
fast,
I'm
so
just
people
trying to-
think that you're coherent.
I'm just
Notice Destiny's retort to Norm's description of the protests being overwhelmingly nonviolent is that there were actually aspects of violence. This is not a contradiction.
At most of the protests, almost every protest had aspects of people that were attacking the wall.
Overwhelmingly means overwhelmingly.
Like it's such a it's such a stupid way to try to have this conversation. Oh my god.
16 سنة صوبت يوم الأرض تاريخ 30/3 يوم الجمعة قلت على الحدود الشرقية في رفح كان في آلاف قلت على الحدود الشرقية في رفح كان في آلاف
Even this thing that he's giving an example of here. Hold on.
قلت
I was on the eastern border in Rafah. Does she mean where the passing is into Egypt? That's being controlled by the Egyptians? Or is she saying the eastern border of the city of Rafah where, is it Kem? No, there is an Israeli checkpoint. I'm assuming she's talking about the Israeli checkpoint. Fuck, there's one to the east. It's closed now, I think, but this. What is it called? What's the one down here, right here? What is this called? There's a name for this. It's Kem Shalem, some whatever. Kem Shalom. I don't know. I'm making words up. Somebody give it. Kerem Shalom. Okay, that's a crossing, I think, right? It's one of the crossings. I think it's closed now, but maybe she must be referring to being at that crossing. I'm assuming.
على الحدود
She says eastern border though. I don't know.
الشرقية في رفح كان في آلاف المتظاهرين والمتظاهرات شباب.
Like, what's going on here? Why are these things on fire here? What's the point? The purpose is to obscure the people that are running up to try to break through the fence. That's what. Is he even aware of that? Does he know that's what's happening?
وفتيات ونساء وأطفال وشيوخ.
Egypt is all in the west, no? Yeah, but it's the eastern border of Egypt. Oh, wait. How do you refer to that? No, east. She must be talking about the eastern border of Gaza. Because I would always say the northern border of the United States, not up at the southern border. It would be because that would be of Canada. She has to be talking about the Kerem Shalom or whatever. Then. Sorry, that was dumb. I'm thinking eastern border of Egypt. Like, look. You see this guy right here. I don't know if you can tell because I got the window small. Look, this guy's running back from the fence. And they've even got these big hills that they've built in order to hide behind it so that they can run up to the fence. If they're just protesting, why do they have to be at the literal fence where Israel says if you come up here, you're going to get shot?
بدينا انه اول ما وصلنا قعدنا شفنا وين رح نقعد وبعديها رجعنا صلينا الجمعة ورجعنا انا وصاحبتي لما وصلنا لقينا كل الشباب.
We went back to the border, but all the guys had backed away from the fence.
راجعين كلهم لورا ما حد متقدم.
My friend and I moved forward. We were in front of the guys. The other girls joined us. We all held hands. We moved to the front. The guys cheered us on. So they are knowingly walking to a border that has signs all over it saying, do not come within 100 meters. And all of them are watching it happen with video cameras rolling. The whole point is to induce civilian casualties. Now, if you want to have the conversation past that of, are they right to do it? Is this an effective form of protest? Are they accomplishing their goals? Is it okay to do this? Nonviolence can be a form of demonstration. MLK and his people did it. It's not like I'm going to sit here and say all nonviolent protest is bad, but like, it's not just random of civilians. It's not just random. I was planting flags in the ground as I was moving forward. I planted a flag and grabbed another to wave it around. The soldiers did not like this sight. I was boiling inside. Every day we see the injustice we live in. I was among the very few in the front. We could be counted on your fingers. I went very close to the wall that says, do not come within 100 meters. I was 20 meters or more from the soldiers. When I was waving the flag, I heard gunshots. I was hit and in shock. And she even looks like she's about to throw something. I don't know, maybe it's just a bad still, but like, Jesus Christ. I was hit and in shock. It was like a nightmare. When they carried me, I fell to the ground. They carried me again and took me to the ambulance. I wanted to pass out. I was in so much pain.
Now you find it so far-fetched.
Like, this is all, like when I say staged, it sounds fake. But this is the goal. It's not just the idea of like randomly killing civilians. The goal is, how do we get the IDF to shoot at us so we can get it on a video and then have like videos for people like Noah Samson to slurp.
Israelis purposely, deliberately targeting civilians? That's such a far-fetched idea. An overwhelmingly non-violent march. What did the UN investigation?
Like, this isn't backing up your point. When you show a video where the girl admits that she was within 20 meters of a border fence that says no, like it's supposed to be not inhabited. There's not supposed to be people within 100 meters of the fence because of people attacking the border. Like, it's not just a random civilian, indiscriminate civilian being shot at.
Fine, brace yourself. You thought it was so funny, the idea of IDF targeting civilians. It found... Go look this up on your machine.
I already know what you're going to say. You're going to say it found that only one or two of them were justified killing.
Targeted journalists.
Somebody said this is mistranslated. She says Yahud instead of soldier. Oh, what is that, Jew?
Targeted medics. And here's the funniest one of all. It's so hilarious. They targeted disabled people who were 300 meters away from the fence and just standing by trees.
Zionism's crazy.
How are they standing if they were disabled? What kind of disability are we talking about? Is he lying? Targeted medics? People with medic vests have been shot. I'm almost positive of this. And with the press vests have been shot, which is considered a war crime. But I would have to go and look up the individual circumstances to each of these shootings because Hamas people like to wear medical vests and like to wear press vests. And it's one of the ways that they fight. Again, there's like video of this where we can literally see medic guy picks up gun, Gaza, war. Fuck, I'm not gonna be able to find this video. Where is it? You can see in the middle of combat, there's a guy that runs. I'm pretty sure he has like a medic vest and he runs in the middle of the street to go pick up a gun and bring it to a soldier, which is also a war crime. You're not allowed to do that, wear a medic vest and do that because it makes people start shooting medics. I don't think anybody gets shot on this, right? I don't know how violent. Hold on. No, I don't think he gets shot. But like this, just to be aware, this would be a circumstance where if this guy did get shot, you hear people like Noah and Finkelstein talk about how Israel is shooting at people in medic vests. They're shooting at hospital personnel. This was in the West Bank. Oh, was it?